When my mother-in-law moved into her house, she said, "Don't worry, I'll make things easier for you." I believed her. But 3 months later, I was sitting in my car outside a grocery store, gripping the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles went white, because I finally understood what she had truly meant. She was here to make my life hers. Let me take you back to the beginning. Before I learned that kindness can sometimes be the quietest mask for control. It started with a death. My father-in-law, Richard, passed away suddenly, a heart attack that came in his sleep. He was the steady one, the calm to my mother-in-law's constant chatter. I still remember the phone call that morning. My husband, Marcus, slumped on the edge of our bed, the early sunlight breaking through the blinds as he whispered, "Mom's alone now. She can't be by herself." I didn't argue. I never did when it came to his mother. Our home was warm and modest, a 2-story brick house with a wraparound porch and a small garden I loved tending. I had built a rhythm there. Mornings filled with the smell of coffee, the sound of our 2 kids, Ava and Caleb, running through the hallway, Marcus leaving early for work while I packed lunches. I loved the routine. It made me feel safe, like the world could be simple if I just kept it neat and cared for. When we drove to his mother's house after the funeral, she looked so small sitting in that overstuffed recliner. Her once perfectly styled silver hair was loose around her shoulders, her eyes red but sharp. "Oh, Marcus," she said softly when she saw him. "I don't want to be a burden, but this house is too big for me now." He looked at me then, eyes silently asking. I smiled, that polite, automatic smile women give when they know the decision's already been made. "Of course," I said. "You can come stay with us." And that's how it began. At first, I tried to see it as a blessing. Maybe her presence would help the kids feel closer to their grandmother. Maybe she'd fill some of the space Marcus and I had been losing between us. That quiet gap that comes after years of routine. The first week was peaceful. She cooked dinner. Her pot roast was perfect and folded laundry before I could get to it. She told stories from her youth, long-winding tales that made the children laugh. I even caught Marcus smiling more than he had in months. But small things began to shift. It started with the kitchen. I walked in one morning to find my spice rack rearranged, my favorite mug replaced by her floral china. "Oh, I thought it'd be better this way," she said cheerfully. "You always seem so rushed in the mornings." Then came the living room. My photos, the ones of my college graduation and the kids' birthdays, were quietly replaced with her family portraits. Marcus didn't notice. Or maybe he didn't want to. When I mentioned it, he just said, "She's grieving, babe. Let her have some comfort." Comfort. That word started to feel heavy in my mouth. By the 3rd week, I noticed her small, needling remarks during dinner. "You look tired, dear," she'd say, spooning mashed potatoes onto Caleb's plate. "I suppose it's hard keeping a house this size without much help." Or, "Marcus always liked his shirts pressed a certain way. I'll show you how he prefers them." Marcus would chuckle, oblivious. "She's just trying to help," he'd say, but I felt it. That subtle shift in power. The quiet replacement of wife with mother. One night, I woke to the faint hum of voices downstairs. The digital clock beside me blinked 1:12 a.m. I slipped on my robe and padded down the hall, careful not to wake the kids. The voices were coming from the kitchen. Marcus and his mother. "I'm just saying she's been distant," I heard her whisper. "You work so hard, darling. You deserve a woman who supports you more." I froze. There was a long pause before Marcus murmured, "Mom, stop please." Then the sound of a chair scraping the floor. I turned and crept back upstairs before either of them could see me. My heart thudded against my ribs. The next morning, she made pancakes, my children's favorite, as if nothing had happened. Marcus kissed my cheek before leaving for work, and I smiled because I didn't know what else to do. But that moment stuck to me like wet cloth. I started noticing things differently. How she lingered too close when Marcus came home. How she sighed loudly when I talked about my job. How she began inviting his coworkers' wives over for coffee without even telling me. And how, slowly, Marcus began to take her side in every small disagreement. It wasn't just her house anymore. It was hers. And somehow, she'd made me the guest. One afternoon, I went to pick up the kids from school and found out she had already done it. "Oh, I thought you could use a little break," she said, standing at the door with a plate of cookies. Ava wanted to come home early anyway. Ava smiled, crumbs on her chin. "Grandma says you need more rest, Mommy." Something in me cracked at that. I had been replaced, quietly, completely, like a shadow fading in daylight. But I told myself it was fine. That maybe this was what family meant. Compromise, patience, grace. Until the night I found the first real clue. A text! A message on Marcus's phone from an unknown number, saved only as C. It read, "Tell your mom I said thank you for covering for us last week." I remember sitting on the edge of our bed, phone in hand, reading that line over and over. My breath caught somewhere between rage and disbelief. Covering for who? Covering what? I didn't know yet. But I was going to find out. And I did. Only the truth was far uglier than I ever imagined. Part 2. The first clue. That text became the echo in my head, soft at first, then unbearable. Tell your mom I said thank you for covering for us last week. I tried to convince myself it meant nothing. Maybe it was work-related. Maybe C was a client. But the unease sat inside me, growing roots. That night, Marcus came home late again. His shirt smelled faintly of perfume, something floral and expensive, the kind that lingers long after a woman leaves a room. I asked gently, "Rough day?" He kissed my forehead, didn't quite meet my eyes, and muttered, "Yeah, long meetings." My mother-in-law, who had been folding laundry at the dining table, smiled knowingly. "You shouldn't stay up waiting for him, dear," she said. "Men get tired when they work hard. You wouldn't want to make him feel guilty for being the provider." The words slid under my skin like needles. I wanted to snap to ask her what she was really implying, but I didn't. I smiled, said goodnight, and went upstairs to our bedroom, where the sheets smelled faintly of cologne and something unfamiliar. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept picturing that text, that perfume, that smirk. By morning, my suspicion had turned into quiet determination. The following week, Marcus's late nights became routine. He'd leave early, come home long after the kids were asleep. His phone always face down on the counter. I started keeping a notebook, jotting down small details, times, places, little inconsistencies in his stories. Thursday. Said he was at a client dinner. No dinner photos, no receipt in his wallet. Saturday. Supposedly worked late at the office, but the office closes at 5. It wasn't proof yet, but it was enough to start listening harder. And then, one afternoon, while cleaning the living room, I found something. A silver earring. Small, delicate, shaped like a teardrop. It was tucked between the couch cushions, right where Marcus often sat when he made his late-night calls. I held it in my palm for a long time, heart pounding. It wasn't mine. I didn't wear jewelry that fancy. And it certainly wasn't his mother's style either. When I went to ask her about it, she was already waiting in the kitchen, almost like she knew. "Oh, that?" she said when I showed her. "I think one of the neighbors stopped by while you were out. I had a few ladies over for tea." Her eyes didn't flicker. Her voice stayed calm, but something in her tone, the faint edge of rehearsed innocence, told me she was lying. I wanted to push further, but Ava ran in just then, waving a drawing from school, and the moment passed. Days went by in uneasy quiet. I began noticing that she was always around when Marcus came home, greeting him first, laughing too loudly at his jokes, fixing his plate before I could. If I tried to talk to him about our schedules, she'd conveniently need to discuss something urgent with him, a broken drawer, a bill she forgot to mention. And slowly, she became the filter between us. If I told Marcus something, she'd misremember it later. If I planned a family outing, she'd complain about her health until he canceled. I was losing him, not suddenly, but through 1,000 small manipulations. Then one evening, I overheard something that shattered the last of my doubts. It was a Tuesday. The kids were asleep, the house wrapped in that eerie stillness that comes only after midnight. I went downstairs to grab a glass of water and froze when I heard Marcus's voice coming from the back porch. He was on the phone low, urgent tones. "No, she doesn't know," he said. "Mom's been keeping her busy. Just give it time." My breath caught. I stepped closer, just enough to see his silhouette through the sliding glass door, the faint glow of his phone lighting his face. Then I heard it. A woman's voice, faint but unmistakable. I couldn't make out her words, but I didn't need to, because when Marcus said, "I miss you too," I felt my knees go weak. The glass in my hand trembled, and that's when I saw movement behind him, my mother-in-law stepping onto the porch, her robe tied neatly, as if she had been waiting for this moment. She didn't look surprised to find him there. She didn't even look guilty. Instead, she placed a gentle hand on his arm and said softly, "You shouldn't talk out here, sweetheart. She's a light sleeper." He nodded, turned, and followed her back inside, past the window where I stood hidden in the dark. I didn't cry that night. Not yet. Instead, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, replaying every small moment, every red flag I had ignored, every time she'd protected him, every little way she'd pushed me out. And then, the next morning, She smiled at me over breakfast like nothing had happened. "Sleep well, dear?" she asked, slicing strawberries for Ava's plate. I forced a nod. "Just fine." But inside, something in me shifted, a quiet click of resolve. If she wanted to play quiet games, I'd learn the rules. And this time, I'd play to win. I started small. I began checking Marcus's location through our shared calendar, something we both used for school pickups and appointments. I learned his office was nowhere near where he claimed to be on his late nights. I searched the phone records, calls to an unfamiliar number almost every evening, the same one that had texted him weeks ago. And then, one morning, as I was about to confront him, my mother-in-law came into the kitchen holding a cup of coffee. "You know," she said gently, "Marcus worries about you. You've seemed off lately. Maybe you should talk to someone." There was a faint condescension in her tone, like I was a fragile child losing her grip. I met her eyes and smiled. "You're right, I think I should." Because I had finally decided what I was going to do. Not scream, not accuse. I was going to uncover the truth, properly, quietly, and in a way she would never see coming. And the first person who helped me was someone I never expected. Our neighbor, Anna. She had seen Marcus's car one night, parked near the downtown hotel. The same night he claimed he was working late. He wasn't alone, she said softly. There was a woman with him. I didn't want to say anything, but I thought you should know. That was the confirmation I needed. Now all that was left was proof. Part 3, the discovery/betrayal. Proof is a cruel thing. You think you want it until you have it in your hands, heavy and undeniable, like a stone you can't put down. 2 nights after Anna's confession, I decided to follow Marcus myself. He said he'd be home late again. Budget meetings, he muttered, avoiding my eyes as he buttoned his shirt. My mother-in-law stood nearby, watching quietly, stirring her tea in slow circles. "Don't wait up, dear," she said in that syrupy tone that always made my stomach turn. I smiled faintly and nodded. But as soon as the garage door closed, I grabbed my coat, keys, and my phone. My hands trembled as I started the car. I kept a few car lengths behind him the whole drive, heart pounding, headlights off whenever I could. It felt ridiculous at first, like something out of a bad drama. But then I saw him turn into the parking lot of the Lakeside Inn, not a hotel for business meetings, but a quiet place known for its discreet clientele. I pulled over across the street and watched. Marcus stepped out, checked his phone, and walked toward the entrance. Then, a woman appeared from the shadows, tall, graceful, with the same silver earrings I'd found in the couch. She smiled at him. He smiled back. And in that moment, every lie he'd told, every late night, every excuse, every half-hearted kiss, crystallized into truth. They embraced, and he kissed her like I hadn't been kissed in months. I wanted to scream, to run out and demand answers. But instead, I just sat there, gripping the steering wheel until my knuckles turned white, tears blurring the windshield. When he disappeared inside with her, I finally exhaled. My breath came out shaky and cold. And that's when I noticed something. Another car parked 2 spaces away. My mother-in-law's silver sedan. I froze. No, it couldn't be. But there it was, the dent on the right bumper, the same sun-faded prayer card on the dashboard. I sat there, stunned, trying to make sense of it. Why was she here? And then, as if in answer, she appeared, walking toward the same entrance, her posture confident, her expression pleased. I watched her step inside the inn as casually as if she were entering a friend's house. For a full 5 minutes, I couldn't move. My mind refused to process it. Then anger began to take shape, slow and sharp, like glass forming under pressure. I started the car and drove home, not because I was done, but because I needed to think. The next morning, Marcus acted like nothing had happened. He made pancakes for the kids, kissed me on the cheek, and chatted about taking his mother to the doctor. I watched him quietly. The man across the table looked like my husband, same tired eyes, same soft laugh, but suddenly he felt like a stranger. After he left, I waited. I knew she'd come back soon. By noon, she did. She hummed as she unpacked groceries, her mood unusually light. "You seem happy today," I said, keeping my tone even. She smiled. "I just believe everything's falling into place, dear. Some things are meant to change." Her words lingered, heavy with meaning I didn't yet understand. That evening, I finally decided to confront Marcus, carefully. I asked about his meeting. He lied, smoothly. I asked if he'd seen his mother during the day. He hesitated, just a flicker, but enough. And then, unable to hold it in, I said, "I followed you last night." His face drained of color. "What?" "I saw you." I whispered. At the Lakeside Inn. With her. Silence. The kind that stretches too long becomes unbearable. Then he ran a hand through his hair and sighed. Look, it's not what you think. Don't, I said sharply. Don't insult me with that. He closed his eyes, took a deep breath. It's been complicated. She's someone I used to know. It just happened. I laughed, a sound that felt foreign bitter. It just happened? While your mother was helping you hide it? He looked up sharply. What are you talking about? Don't lie, Marcus. I saw her car there. I saw her walk inside. That broke his composure. He stared at me, stunned. You saw her? Yes, I said. And she didn't look surprised to be there. He turned away, muttering something under his breath. And that's when I realized he wasn't shocked because I had caught her. He was shocked because she hadn't told him. Later that night, I overheard them arguing in the kitchen. She whispered fiercely, I told you not to let her see me. I didn't know she was following me, he hissed back. You're sloppy, Marcus. Do you want her to take the kids? Do you want to lose everything? I stood in the hallway, shaking. So it was true. She had known all along. She had been helping him. I couldn't hear the rest. My legs wouldn't hold me. I went upstairs, locked the bathroom door, and sat on the cold tile floor, trembling in silent fury. Over the next few days, everything in the house shifted. Marcus avoided me, and she treated me like a guest in my own home, polite, distant, dismissive. But I noticed something else. She was watching me. My phone would disappear for a few minutes, then reappear in odd places. My laptop felt slower, like something had been installed. One afternoon, I checked the browser history. My email had been accessed while I was at work. That was the final straw. I decided then that I was leaving. But I wouldn't leave quietly. I'd make sure they both faced what they'd done. I started planning carefully. I took photos of the messages, the call logs, even the earring. I backed everything up. I called a lawyer just to know my rights. Then, 2 weeks later, I found my opportunity. Marcus left his laptop open in the study. I didn't mean to snoop nut at first, but when I saw an email from Clara, I froze. It read, Your mother says she'll handle her. Don't worry. Once she's gone, things will be easy. There it was. The confirmation that my mother-in-law wasn't just aware, she was orchestrating it. They wanted me gone. That night, I didn't sleep. I lay awake beside him, my back turned, staring into the darkness. By dawn, my decision was made. If they wanted me gone, I'd go, but not empty-handed. I'd leave with the truth. And by the time they realized what I'd done, it would already be too late. It's strange, the calm that comes after devastation. Once you've cried every tear and grieved the life you thought you had, something inside you hardens, or maybe it simply awakens. That morning, I woke up before dawn. The house was silent, but I could still hear the faint hum of the refrigerator and the soft ticking of the wall clock. I got up quietly, brewed myself a cup of coffee, and sat at the kitchen table with my phone, the same spot where I had once laughed with Marcus over burnt toast and morning rushes. Now it was a war room. I opened my notes, pages of screenshots, emails, timestamps. Every lie had a date, every secret a receipt. I wasn't sure what I would do with them yet, but I knew one thing for certain. I would not let them bury me quietly. The first thing I did was secure the children, not physically, but emotionally. I began spending more time with them outside the house, little moments that couldn't be manipulated by her whispers or his silences. We'd grab ice cream after school, walk by the river, talk about their dreams. I wanted them to remember me, not the version she was rewriting in their minds. One evening, as we sat by the water, my youngest, Lily, said softly, Grandma says you might go away for a while. Is that true, Mommy? My heart clenched. Did she say why? Lily shrugged. She said you're tired. That sometimes mommies need a break. I took a deep breath, forcing calm into my voice. Sweetheart, I'm not going anywhere right now. But if I ever do, it'll be because I want to make things better for us. Okay? She nodded, still uncertain, and rested her head on my arm. I stared out over the rippling water, my jaw tight. My mother-in-law wasn't just cruel, she was dangerous. The next step was setting boundaries without alerting them. I started locking my things, my laptop, my documents, even my purse. I moved my bank accounts into my own name, rerouted my paycheck to a new account. Quietly. Discreetly. Marcus barely noticed. He was too busy pretending life was normal. He still kissed me on the forehead each morning, still made small talk about the weather, still played the role of a faithful husband, but I could see the guilt in his eyes. It lingered there like fog. One night, I sat across from him at dinner. He was scrolling through his phone, not even looking up. "Marcus," I said softly. He looked up. "Yeah? I've been thinking." I began carefully, stirring my soup though I wasn't hungry. "Maybe we should spend some time apart, just to breathe." He frowned. "What? Where is this coming from?" I shrugged. "We've been off lately. I think some distance could help." He leaned back, studying me. "Did my mother say something? Because you know how she gets." I almost laughed, the hypocrisy of that sentence. "No," I said calmly. "This is about us." He didn't like that. His eyes hardened slightly, the way they did when he felt control slipping. "You're overreacting, Maya. Every couple goes through rough patches." "Maybe," I said, meeting his gaze. "But not every couple involves 3 people in the marriage." His face twitched, just slightly. But I caught it. I smiled faintly and stood up. "Good night, Marcus." And for the first time in a long time, I was the one to walk away. Over the next few weeks, I became a ghost in my own home, quiet, watchful, deliberate. I gathered every document that mattered: house deed, insurance papers, financial statements. I scanned and backed them up. I transferred important files to a private email, one Marcus didn't know existed. And then I started packing, one box at a time, hidden in the trunk of my car beneath old blankets. I didn't know where I'd go yet, maybe to my sister's, maybe a small apartment nearby. But when the moment came, I would be ready. Then came the night that sealed everything. Marcus and his mother thought I'd gone to bed early. I heard their voices downstairs, low, urgent. I crept halfway down the stairs and listened. "She's pulling away," Marcus said, frustration in his voice. "She's planning something," his mother replied. "I can feel it. You need to act before she does." "And do what?" "She's the kid's mother." "She's weak," his mother hissed. "Always has been. She'll leave if you push her far enough." "That's what we want. Once she's gone, the house and the children are secure." There was silence for a long moment. Then Marcus said quietly, "You're cold, you know that?" She chuckled softly. "I'm realistic. Darling, someone has to protect you." That was it. That was all I needed. The next morning, I acted normal, made breakfast, kissed the kids, smiled at my husband. But inside, I had already left. When they both left the house later that day, I made my move. I packed everything I could fit into my car: clothes, a few toys for the kids, my documents, my wedding ring left on the counter like a period at the end of a long, painful sentence. I left a note, just one line: "You both built a house of lies. I won't live in it anymore." Then I drove away, hands shaking, tears streaming, heartbreaking and healing all at once. I didn't look back, not even when the house disappeared in the rearview mirror. I stayed with my sister for a while. She didn't ask many questions, just made me tea and gave me space to breathe. For the first time in years, I slept without fear of what waited in the morning. A few weeks later, my lawyer contacted me. Marcus had already tried to access joint funds and file for abandonment, but he didn't realize I had copies of everything. When I handed over the emails and call logs, even the lawyer went quiet. It was all there, their scheme, their deceit, their manipulation. And slowly, the power shifted. For once, I was in control. When the papers were finally filed, the divorce, the custody arrangements, I felt no rage, no sorrow, just release. Sometimes peace doesn't come as forgiveness. It comes as freedom, and I had finally chosen mine. Part 5. The public consequence. When you've been quiet for too long, people forget that silence isn't weakness, it's patience. And when patience runs out, truth has a way of speaking louder than any rumor ever could. By the time the court dates began, the whispers had already started. Not from me, but from people around us. Neighbors noticed the sudden tension. The way Marcus and his mother stopped showing up to church together. The way the kids spent weekends only with me now. I never tried to defend myself. I didn't need to. Truth has a way of walking into the room on its own, steady, undeniable. The first public crack appeared during a Sunday service. Our pastor had always admired our family, the perfect couple who volunteered together, smiled for the crowd, brought casseroles to community events. That morning, I walked in alone with the children. People noticed. After service, the pastor asked to speak with me privately. "Maya," he said gently, "I've heard there are troubles at home." I want you to know the congregation is praying for you both. I looked him in the eye and said softly, "Pray for the children, Pastor. The adults made their choices." He hesitated. "Is there anything you'd like me to share with Marcus's mother?" I smiled faintly. "No, I think she's been sharing enough for all of us." That was all I said. But word travels fast in small communities, faster than fire through dry grass. Within weeks, the full story began to surface. It started with one of Marcus's coworkers, who accidentally let slip that the woman he'd been mentoring had recently left their office after a disagreement. Then someone else mentioned seeing his mother having lunch with that same woman weeks before. You can imagine how the puzzle pieces began to fit themselves together. The story reached our circle, friends we used to host dinners with, neighbors we waved to every morning. They tried to stay neutral, but the shame on Marcus's face every time someone looked at him told me all I needed to know. People didn't need my words. His silence told them everything. When the court hearing came, I sat across from him and his mother, both stone-faced, dressed in black as though mourning something they'd lost. Maybe they were. My lawyer presented the evidence clearly. The secret communications, the financial manipulation, the emotional interference. When the judge looked over the documents and then up at Marcus, the air felt heavy with truth. "Mr. Daniels," the judge said, voice steady, "you understand this behavior shows a deliberate attempt to deceive your spouse and violate financial trust." Marcus swallowed hard. His mother shifted in her seat, whispering something under her breath. The judge continued, "Given this, custody and ownership decisions will reflect Mrs. Daniels' right to stability and protection." For the first time in months, I allowed myself a small breath of relief. Not victory, just peace. After court, his mother approached me in the hallway. She looked smaller than I remembered. Her sharp edges seemed dulled by defeat. "You've embarrassed this family," she said quietly, eyes burning. I met her gaze evenly. "No, Evelyn. I just stopped hiding what was already there." Her lip trembled, whether from anger or guilt, I couldn't tell. "You've taken everything from him." I shook my head. "No. You both lost what you took for granted." And then I walked away. I didn't turn back when I heard her whisper, "You were never good enough for him anyway." Because by then, I finally understood. She needed to believe that. That's how she lived with herself. The weeks that followed were filled with a strange quiet. Marcus moved out of his mother's home after they had a falling out. Something about money, something about blame. It didn't matter. They both had built their foundation on control, and once the cracks showed, it all came down fast. I focused on rebuilding, not the house, not the finances, but myself. I got a smaller apartment, closer to the kids' school. It wasn't grand, but it was peaceful. I painted the walls a soft sage green, filled it with the smell of lavender candles and the sound of laughter that didn't have to be forced. One evening, as I was tucking the kids into bed, my son asked quietly, "Mom, are you happier now?" I paused, looking at his sleepy eyes. "I think I'm learning to be," I said. He smiled. "Good you laugh more now." That one sentence felt like healing. I didn't see Marcus for a while, though he called occasionally, mostly to talk about the children. His tone was different now, softer, like a man who'd finally realized what his silence had cost him. Once, near the end of summer, he said, "Mom doesn't talk to me much anymore. She blames me for losing you." I didn't know what to say to that. He hesitated, then added, "I do too, sometimes." There was a long silence between us. "Marcus," I said gently, "you didn't lose me. You gave me away." And I finally decided not to come back. He didn't reply. But I think that was the moment he truly understood. The community moved on eventually. New gossip replaced old stories. People smiled at me again, not out of pity, but out of respect. Because I had survived the kind of storm that could have broken anyone, and I'd done it with my dignity intact. And somewhere deep down, I knew that was the kind of quiet victory no one could ever take from me again. Part 6. The resolution/healing. It's strange how peace doesn't arrive like a thunderclap. It comes quietly, like the hum of a refrigerator in the middle of the night, or the sound of your own breathing when the world finally stops spinning. For months after the divorce, I had to relearn how to live. Simple things felt foreign, waking up without tension in my shoulders, eating breakfast without waiting for someone's disapproval, opening my phone without dread. Freedom wasn't loud. It was gentle. And at first, that gentleness felt almost frightening. I started working part-time at a small floral shop owned by a kind woman named Rosa. She didn't ask too many questions, just handed me an apron and said, "These flowers won't judge you, honey. They only need light and patience." Her words stuck with me. Every day, I arranged bouquets for strangers, weddings, birthdays, even funerals. I found comfort in the routine. The scent of fresh lilies, the softness of petals, the quiet rhythm of snipping stems. It reminded me that life still grew, even after being cut. Rosa would sometimes hum jazz songs while we worked, and when she caught me lost in thought, she'd smile knowingly. "Whatever it is you're holding on to, let it go, Maya. You deserve to bloom too." I didn't tell her how deeply that hit me. But that night, I went home and threw out the last box of things that reminded me of my old life, photos, cards, even the wedding china his mother insisted we keep for show. I replaced it with mismatched mugs from thrift stores and plates my children painted themselves. Imperfect. Real. Ours. The kids were adjusting better than I expected. My daughter, Emily, started helping at the shop after school. She loved making daisy arrangements for customers, always adding a small yellow ribbon because, she said, it makes people smile. My son joined a local soccer team. He was quieter than before. But when I saw him score his first goal, the look of pride on his face reminded me that resilience runs deep in children who are loved enough to heal. Sometimes, on Sunday mornings, we'd sit on the balcony with pancakes and orange juice. The city would wake up around us. The sound of birds, the smell of coffee from the neighbor's kitchen, the warmth of sunlight through sheer curtains. Those mornings became sacred to me. They were proof that peace didn't have to be perfect. It just had to be honest. Months later, I ran into Marcus at a school event. He looked older, worn in ways I hadn't seen before. His eyes lingered on the kids a little too long, maybe trying to remember what it felt like when things were simple. He asked if we could talk for a moment. We stood near the parking lot, where the wind carried the sound of children laughing from the playground. I just wanted to say. He hesitated, searching for words. "You were right about everything. About her. About Mom. About me." I stayed quiet. He looked down, then continued. "I thought I was doing what she wanted. That keeping the peace meant keeping you quiet. But all I did was destroy both." There was pain in his voice, but not manipulation, just regret. "I don't expect forgiveness," he said softly. "I just hope you're happy now." I nodded slowly. "I am learning to be." He smiled sadly. "You always were stronger than me." I didn't answer that. Some truths didn't need repeating. When he walked away, I felt no anger, just a strange, tender sadness for what could have been if love had come without control. As seasons changed, so did I. I enrolled in a counseling course, something I'd always wanted to do but never had permission for. I wanted to help women like me, those who smiled through silence, who carried pain disguised as politeness. It was hard at first, stepping into classrooms again, surrounded by younger students. But every time I doubted myself, I remembered Evelyn's voice saying, "You'll never be good enough." And then I'd think, watch me. Each passing week, I felt pieces of myself returning, confidence, laughter, curiosity. I started journaling again. Not the kind of writing that rehashed pain, but the kind that acknowledged growth. I am not who I was in that house. I am not someone's wife or someone's disappointment. I am me, and that's finally enough. A year later, I took the kids to the coast for the first time. We stood on the edge of the water as waves lapped at our feet. Emily ran ahead, chasing seagulls, while my son built a crooked sandcastle. The sky was painted in soft oranges and pinks, the kind of sunset that felt like closure. For the first time in a long time, I breathed deeply, without fear or sadness. The ocean didn't care about who I used to be, or who had hurt me. It just kept moving, constant, patient, endless. And maybe that was the lesson I needed most. That healing isn't about forgetting the pain. It's about learning to live beyond it, to keep moving, to keep choosing yourself even when it's hard. When we drove home that evening, my son fell asleep in the back seat, his head resting against the window. Emily looked at me and whispered, "Mom?" "Yes, sweetheart." "Do you think Grandma ever feels sorry?" I glanced at her in the mirror. "Maybe. But even if she doesn't, that's not our burden to carry." She smiled, small but sure. "Good, I don't want to be sad anymore." Neither did I. That night, after the kids were asleep, I stood by the window watching the moonlight fall across the floor. I realized that while Evelyn had taken so much from me, time, trust, peace, she had also given me something unintended: clarity. Because losing everything forced me to see what was worth keeping. And what was worth keeping was me. When I look back now, I don't see my marriage as a failure. I see it as a lesson that finally had the courage to end itself. People often ask me if I ever forgave my mother-in-law or my husband. And the truth is, forgiveness for me wasn't about saying it's okay. It was about saying it happened and it no longer owns me. For years, I thought being a good wife and a good daughter-in-law meant keeping quiet, keeping peace, keeping everyone else comfortable, even when I wasn't. But peace built on silence isn't peace. It's surrender. I learned that love doesn't mean losing yourself to keep others happy. Real love, the kind that lasts, is built on honesty, respect, and space to breathe. And sometimes, the bravest thing you can do is walk away. Not because you stopped loving them, but because you finally started loving yourself. Today, my home is small, but it's filled with laughter. My kids dance in the kitchen. My mornings begin with sunlight, not shouting. And when I look in the mirror, I finally recognize the woman staring back. Tired, maybe, but free. If you're listening to this and you feel trapped, maybe not by a person, but by fear or guilt, I hope my story reminds you that it's never too late to start over. You can rebuild from the quietest pieces of yourself. You can plant new roots in the very soil that once felt like ruin. And one day, you'll look around and realize that peace isn't something you find. It's something you become. So, tell me, if you were in my place, would you have stayed to keep the family together? Or would you have walked away to save your own soul? Share your thoughts in the comments. I'd love to hear your heart. And if my story touched you, don't forget to subscribe for more real-life stories every week. Because here, in our little corner of truth, every story reminds us, no matter how broken we've been, healing is still possible.